I was sitting alone in that cold examination room, staring at the two pink lines on the test strip, and my hands would not stop shaking. 7 years. 7 long years of trying, of hoping, of crying myself to sleep after every failed attempt. And now, finally, those 2 lines appeared like a miracle I had almost stopped believing in. Tears rolled down my cheeks, but they were tears of pure joy. I could not wait to rush home and tell Derek. I imagined his face lighting up, his arms wrapping around me. But when I got home that evening, his reaction shattered something inside me that I am still piecing back together today. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. If stories about strength, resilience, and finding your worth resonate with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Now let me take you back to where it all began so you can understand how I went from the happiest moment of my life to the most devastating betrayal. My name is Wilhelmina, and I met Derek 8 years ago at a small art exhibition in Portland, Oregon. I was 24 years old, working as a middle school art teacher, and he was a software engineer who had wandered into the gallery looking for a birthday gift for his mother. We bumped into each other in front of a watercolor painting of the Oregon coast, and he made some awkward joke about how the waves looked like they were trying to escape the canvas. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because there was something endearing about the way he delivered it with such earnest sincerity. We exchanged numbers that day, and within a week, we were inseparable. Derek was attentive back then. He remembered the little things like how I took my coffee with exactly 2 sugars and a splash of oat milk, or how I always wore mismatched socks because I thought it brought good luck. He told me on our 3rd date that he wanted a big family someday, at least 3 kids running around a house with a backyard. His eyes sparkled when he talked about teaching his future children how to ride bikes and build tree houses. I fell in love with that vision as much as I fell in love with him. We dated for 2 years before he proposed on a rainy afternoon at the same gallery where we first met. The wedding was small, just close friends and family held in his parents' backyard in Lake Oswego. I remember thinking that day that I was the luckiest woman alive. I had found my person, my partner, my future. But life had other plans for us. The first year of marriage, we started trying for a baby right away. Month after month, the tests came back negative. I told myself it was normal that these things take time, but by the end of year 2, I knew something was wrong. I went to see a specialist, a kind woman named Dr. Nguyen, who had a gentle voice and warm hands. She ran tests and told me I had polycystic ovary syndrome, which was making it difficult for me to ovulate regularly. She prescribed medications, gave me a strict schedule to follow, and assured me that many women with my condition went on to have healthy pregnancies. So we tried harder. I charted my cycles obsessively, took my temperature every morning before my feet touched the floor, swallowed pills that made me bloated and emotional. We tried intrauterine insemination 3 times. Each time I lay on that examination table with my eyes closed, praying to whoever might be listening. Each time the results were the same. Negative. Then we moved on to in vitro fertilization. The first round did not take at all. The second round, by some miracle, worked. I saw the tiny heartbeat on the ultrasound screen at 6 weeks, and I sobbed with happiness. Derek held my hand in the examination room, and I thought, maybe finally our prayers had been answered. But at 8 weeks, I started bleeding. The heartbeat was gone. Our baby was gone. That miscarriage broke something in me. I could not get out of bed for 2 weeks. I stopped eating, stopped painting, stopped doing all the things that used to bring me joy. And somewhere in that darkness, I noticed that Derek had started pulling away. He stopped asking how I was feeling. He stopped holding me when I cried. He started coming home later and later from work, always with excuses about deadlines and meetings. I told myself he was grieving too, that men process loss differently. I made excuses for him because I loved him, and because I desperately wanted to believe that we would get through this together. After the miscarriage, we took a break from treatments. The doctors said my body needed time to heal, and honestly, so did my heart. For almost 2 years, we did not actively try. I focused on my job, threw myself into teaching, tried to find meaning in helping my students discover their creativity. Derek and I existed in the same house, but felt like strangers sharing a roof. We rarely talked about the baby we lost. We rarely talked about anything meaningful at all. Then, one spring morning, 7 years into our marriage, I woke up feeling nauseous. At first, I thought I had food poisoning from the Thai takeout we had the night before. But when the nausea continued for a week, when my breasts became tender, and my period was 2 weeks late, I bought a test on my way home from school. I did not tell Derek. I could not bear to see disappointment in his eyes again if it was negative. But it was not negative. I sat on the bathroom floor staring at those 2 pink lines, and I let myself hope again. This time, I thought would be different. This time, we would finally become parents. I wanted to make the announcement special. I stopped at the store and bought ingredients for Derek's favorite meal, lasagna with garlic bread. I placed the positive test inside a small gift box and wrapped it with a blue ribbon. I set the table with candles, put on soft music, and waited. Derek came home 2 hours late. He walked through the door looking tired, his tie loosened his jaw tight. Before I could even greet him, he muttered something about a rough day and headed straight for the refrigerator to grab a beer. I tried not to let his mood dampen my excitement. I guided him to the table, served the food, made small talk about nothing important. Then I slid the gift box across the table. He looked at it with confusion, maybe even annoyance. He opened it slowly, and I watched his face searching for that spark of joy I had imagined so many times. But it never came. He stared at the test for what felt like an eternity. Then he put it back in the box and said without looking at me, "Are you sure we should wait for the doctor to confirm?" That was it. No hug, no smile, no happy tears, just cold clinical doubt. I felt the first crack form in my heart that night. I told myself he was just being cautious, that after everything we had been through, he did not want to get his hopes up. I made excuses for him again because that was what I had always done. The doctor confirmed the pregnancy a week later. I was 6 weeks along, and the ultrasound showed a strong heartbeat. Dr. Nguyen congratulated me with genuine warmth and scheduled my next appointment. I floated out of that office, feeling like I was walking on clouds. Finally, after everything, our dream was coming true. But Derek did not float with me. When I showed him the ultrasound picture that evening, he barely glanced at it before returning his attention to his phone. I asked if he wanted to come to the next appointment, and he said he probably would not be able to get away from work. I asked if we could start talking about names, and he said it was too early to think about that. I asked if he was happy, and he paused just long enough before saying, "Of course," to let me know the answer was more complicated than those 2 words. The weeks that followed were some of the loneliest of my life. I was carrying new life inside me, but I had never felt more alone. Derek moved into the guest room, claiming he did not want to disturb my sleep with his tossing and turning. He stopped asking about my prenatal appointments. He stopped touching my belly. He stopped looking at me the way a husband should look at his pregnant wife. One night around my 10th week, I woke up at 2 a.m. to use the bathroom. I heard Derek's voice coming from downstairs, soft and low. I crept to the top of the stairs and listened. He was laughing, a genuine laugh I had not heard directed at me in months. Then I heard him say in a voice dripping with affection, "I miss you too. I will see you soon." My blood ran cold. I wanted to confront him right there to demand answers, but I was paralyzed. I went back to bed and lay there until dawn, staring at the ceiling, wondering who the woman on the other end of that call was and how long this had been going on. In the days that followed, I started noticing things I had been too naive or too hopeful to see before. The way Derek would angle his phone away from me when texting, the way he deleted his call history, the way he smelled faintly of a perfume that was not mine when he came home late. I did not have proof, not yet, but I knew in my gut that my husband was having an affair. I confided in my best friend Caroline, who had been my rock through all the fertility struggles. She listened without judgment, and then said something I was not ready to hear. She said, "Wilhelmina, you deserve so much better than this. You and your baby both do." I cried on her shoulder for an hour, but I still was not ready to accept that my marriage might be over. Then, Derek's mother Margaret called to announce she was hosting a family dinner to celebrate the pregnancy. My stomach churned at the thought of sitting across from his family, pretending everything was fine. But Derek insisted we go. He said it would look bad if we did not, that his family would talk. I agreed, because I still cared about keeping up appearances. I still thought maybe somehow things could get better. On the day of the dinner, I spent extra time getting ready. I chose a soft green dress that accommodated my growing belly. I applied makeup carefully, trying to hide the dark circles under my eyes from all the sleepless nights. I looked at myself in the mirror and almost did not recognize the woman staring back. She looked tired. She looked sad. But she was trying so hard to be strong. Derek barely spoke to me on the drive to his parents' house in Lake Oswego. The tension in the car was thick enough to choke on. When we arrived, Patricia, Derek's older sister, greeted us at the door with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Patricia had never liked me. From the very beginning, she made it clear she thought her brother could do better. She had a way of making cutting remarks disguised as compliments, and she always seemed to know exactly where to aim to cause the most damage. The dinner started awkwardly. Margaret asked polite questions about the pregnancy, but there was an undercurrent of something I could not quite identify. Harold, Derek's father, sat at the head of the table in silence, focused on his food. Patricia kept exchanging glances with Derek like they were sharing some private joke I was not part of. I felt like an outsider at a table surrounded by people who were supposed to be my family. We were halfway through the main course when everything fell apart. Margaret asked in what I thought was genuine curiosity if we had started thinking about the nursery yet. Before I could respond, Derek let out a bitter laugh. He had been drinking steadily all evening, and his words came out sharp and slurred. "Do not expect me to celebrate," he said loud enough for everyone to hear. I never wanted this mistake. The table went silent. I felt the blood drain from my face. I turned to look at him, searching for some sign that he was joking, that this was some terrible misunderstanding. But his eyes were cold, filled with something that looked dangerously close to contempt. "Derek," I whispered. "What are you saying?" He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "You heard me. After all these years, suddenly, you are pregnant. Who knows if it is even mine? Ever heard of maternity and DNA tests?" My ears started ringing. I could not believe what I was hearing. This man, the man I had loved for 8 years, the man I had suffered through countless treatments and heartbreaks for, was accusing me of cheating. Me, the woman who had given everything to try to give him the family he claimed to want. Before I could respond, Patricia let out a cackling laugh that pierced through the silence like a knife. "Well, she said that child is doomed with her as a mother." I looked around the table, desperate for someone to defend me. Margaret stared at her plate. Harold cleared his throat and reached for his wine glass. No one said a word. No one stood up for me. In that moment, I realized I was completely alone. Something shifted inside me then. It was like a switch being flipped, a fog lifting from my eyes. I had spent years making excuses for this man, years diminishing my own worth to accommodate his moods and his distance. I had blamed myself for our fertility struggles, blamed myself for his coldness, blamed myself for not being enough. But sitting at that table, listening to him and his sister mock me and my unborn child, I finally understood the truth. The problem had never been me. I put down my fork carefully. I wiped my mouth with the napkin and placed it beside my plate. Then I looked directly into Derek's eyes, and I spoke in a voice that was calmer and steadier than I felt. "You are right," I said. "This child does not deserve a father like you." I pushed back my chair and stood up. I picked up my purse. And without another word, I walked out of that house, out of that family, out of that life. No one followed me. No one called my name or tried to stop me. The only sound was the click of my heels on the hardwood floor and the quiet thud of the front door closing behind me. I drove through the night with tears streaming down my face, but they were not tears of sadness anymore. They were tears of release. For the first time in years, I could breathe. For the first time in years, I was choosing myself. I drove straight to my Aunt Ruth's house in Eugene, about 2 hours south of Portland. Aunt Ruth was my mother's sister, a fiercely independent woman who had divorced her own husband 20 years ago when he cheated on her. She had built a beautiful life on her own terms, and she had always told me that I was stronger than I knew. When she opened the door at midnight and saw me standing there pregnant and crying, she did not ask questions. She just pulled me into her arms and held me while I sobbed. "You did the right thing, sweetheart," she whispered. "You did the right thing." I stayed with Aunt Ruth for the next 3 months. Derek called a few times, but never to apologize. He demanded that I come home so we could talk like adults. He accused me of being dramatic and emotional. He said I was ruining his reputation. I stopped answering his calls. Caroline helped me retrieve my belongings from the house while Derek was at work. She packed up my art supplies, my clothes, my grandmother jewelry. She said the house felt cold without me in it, like all the warmth had been sucked out. I told her the warmth had been gone long before I left. I hired a divorce attorney, a sharp woman named Diane, who specialized in cases involving infidelity. She dug into Derek's finances and found proof of what I had suspected. Credit card statements showing expensive dinners and hotel rooms. Texts recovered from cloud backups with a woman named Stephanie, a co-worker he had been seeing for at least 18 months. The timeline meant the affair had started right around our second IVF attempt, right around the time I lost our first baby. While I was lying in bed grieving, he was falling into someone else's arms. The divorce was finalized when I was 7 months pregnant. Derek did not contest it once the evidence came to light. He did not fight for custody. He did not even ask about the baby. I walked out of that courthouse with a settlement check and my freedom, and I never looked back. I gave birth to my daughter Lily on a snowy December morning in a small hospital in Ashland, Oregon. I had moved there after the divorce, wanting a fresh start in a place where no one knew my story. Aunt Ruth was by my side in the delivery room, holding my hand, coaching my breathing. When the nurses placed Lily in my arms for the first time, I understood what unconditional love truly meant. She was perfect. 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and her grandmother eyes. She was mine, and I was hers, and that was all that mattered. The first few months of motherhood were harder than anything I had ever experienced. Sleep became a distant memory. I learned to function on 2-hour stretches of rest and cold cups of coffee. There were moments when I felt overwhelmed, when I wondered if I could really do this alone. But every time Lily looked up at me with those big, trusting eyes, I found the strength to keep going. I started teaching art classes online, building a small business from my kitchen table while Lily napped in her crib nearby. It was not glamorous, but it paid the bills. Aunt Ruth helped whenever she could babysitting, so I could work bringing over home-cooked meals when I was too exhausted to cook. I joined a support group for single mothers at the local community center, and I found a tribe of women who understood my struggles without needing explanations. Slowly, painfully, beautifully, I rebuilt my life. Years passed. Lily grew from a baby into a toddler, from a toddler into a curious preschooler, from a preschooler into a bright and creative elementary schooler. She inherited my love of art and would spend hours with crayons and paper creating worlds from her imagination. She had her father eyes, a fact that stung a little at first, but eventually I stopped seeing him when I looked at her. She was entirely her own person, full of light and laughter and wonder. I eventually saved enough money to open a small art studio downtown. I called it Lily Pad Studios, and it became a gathering place for children and adults who wanted to explore their creativity. I taught painting and drawing, hosted birthday parties and team-building events, built a community around something I loved. The studio was modest, just 2 rooms in a converted warehouse, but it was mine. I had created it with my own hands, my own vision, my own resilience. When Lily was 5, I met a man named Marcus at a farmer's market. He was a woodworker with calloused hands and a gentle smile, selling handmade cutting boards from a small booth. We started talking about nothing in particular, and 3 hours later, we were still standing there, our coffees long cold, laughing about stories from our childhoods. He was divorced too, with a teenage son from his first marriage. He understood loss and rebuilding. He understood what it meant to start over. Marcus and I took things slow. He met Lily after 6 months of dating, and they bonded over a shared love of building things. He helped me install shelves in the studio. He taught Lily how to sand wood without getting splinters. He never tried to replace anything or anyone in our lives. He simply added to what was already there, filling spaces I did not even know were empty. Then one morning, 7 years after I walked out of that dinner, an email appeared in my inbox. The subject line was simply from Derek. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Part of me wanted to delete it without reading to keep that chapter of my life firmly closed. But curiosity won out. The email was long and rambling. Derek wrote that he had changed, that he had been going to therapy, that he had ended things with Stephanie years ago when she cheated on him with someone else. He said he had been watching my studio Instagram page and had seen pictures of Lily. He said she was beautiful. He said he wanted to meet her, to be part of her life, to be the father he should have been from the beginning. I read the email twice. Then I closed my laptop and went to pick Lily up from school. That night after dinner, I showed Lily a photograph of Derek. I had kept a few pictures, not for sentimental reasons, but because I knew someday she might have questions. I explained in terms a 7-year-old could understand that this was the man who helped create her, but that he had made choices that hurt us, which is why he was not in our lives. Lily studied the photograph with her serious little face. Then she looked up at me and said, "Mom, do you want him to come back?" I told her that was not my decision to make. I asked her if she wanted to meet him someday. She thought about it for a moment. Then she shrugged and handed the photo back to me. "I have you," she said simply. "I have Aunt Ruth. I have Marcus and Tyler." She paused and then added, "I already have everything I need." I hugged her tighter than I ever had before. I wrote back to Derek that evening. My response was brief and polite. I told him that I had moved on, that Lily was happy and healthy, that she knew about him in an age-appropriate way. I told him that when she was older, if she wanted to reach out, I would support her decision. But that decision would be hers to make, not his, and not mine. Until then, I asked him to respect our boundaries. He replied a few days later, disappointed but accepting. He said he understood. He said he was sorry for everything. I read his apology and felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, not vindication, just peace. I think that is what healing truly looks like. It is not about revenge or seeing the person who hurt you suffer. It is about reaching a place where their actions no longer have power over you. It is about building a life so full and so beautiful that the past becomes just a story you tell, sometimes not a wound that bleeds. Sitting on my porch now, watching Lily paint in the backyard with Marcus, building something beside her, I think about the woman I used to be. The woman who sat alone in that cold examination room, shaking with joy over 2 pink lines. The woman who made herself smaller and smaller to fit into a marriage that was never going to nurture her. The woman who walked out of a dinner where she was mocked and belittled, not knowing what came next, but knowing she deserved better. I am proud of her. I am proud of me. If you are watching this and you are stuck in a situation that is draining your light, I want you to know something. You are stronger than you think. The path forward might be terrifying. It might be lonely. But on the other side of that fear is a life you cannot even imagine yet. A life where you get to choose yourself every single day. And the sun will rise again. It always does. So now, I want to ask you, have you ever had to walk away from something or someone you thought would last forever? How did you find the courage to start over? Share your story in the comments below, because I believe our experiences can help others who might be going through something similar. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like. If you want to hear more stories about resilience, strength, and finding your worth, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, please share this video with them. Sometimes a single story can be the spark that helps someone find their own courage. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Whatever storm you are facing right now, I am sending you strength and hope. You deserve happiness. You deserve peace. And you absolutely deserve a love that celebrates you, not one that tears you down. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next story.